probably 5 to 8 minutes.
Holy crap.
That it's going to take off my marathon time. Yeah. I think that if you're running much slower than, say, like 3.5 hours for the marathon, you're probably not getting much of a benefit.
You could take a Pizza Hut pizza, which is not the same one that they had when we were kids. If you had no teeth, you could still eat it.
Right. You can gum that. And I'm going to blow your mind with the most ridiculous, heinous recipe you have ever seen in your life. Welcome to 2%. I'm your host, Michael Easter. This is a podcast about health, wellness, and how to improve your life. I'm a best-selling author. I have the 2% Substack, and I've been thinking about these topics for about 20 years now, and we have a really great episode for you today. So this Monday, Patriots Day in Massachusetts, we are going to have the 130th Boston Marathon. It is the oldest marathon in the United States of America. It is also arguably the most important, influential marathon in the world. So to talk about that, we are bringing on a guy who ran it last year and ran it really well. His name is Brady Holmer. He runs the Physiologically Speaking Substack. He is a self-described wannabe running influencer, but he's also a very bright scientist in the realm of endurance. So he's going to walk us through what it was actually like running the Boston Marathon, how he trained for it, and how you can think about training for your own runs. He's going to talk about fueling his runs, and we will also just talk about all the crazy things that might happen in this year's Boston Marathon. It's a big one. There's a lot of balls up in the air about who will win this year. After that, with the idea of fueling for endurance and the runs that you're going to be doing this spring, this summer, out on the trails, on the roads around your home, we're going to bring in Dr. Mike Roussell. He is a PhD nutritionist, got his nutrition PhD at Penn State. Now, you might think this guy, given his nutrition training, says you should never eat ultra-processed foods. That is what you hear from everyone these days. But he takes a more nuanced look at the topic. It turns out there might actually be times when ultra-processed foods are the healthiest thing you can eat. So he'll describe when those moments are. Then after that, we are going to go inside the 2% kitchen, and I'm going to blow your mind with the most ridiculous, heinous recipe you have ever seen in your life. Now, I ate this when I was doing a very long hike across southern Utah. I was hiking about 25 miles a day this time last year for days on end. And so I would make this recipe. It is ridiculous. It sounds like the worst thing you will ever eat, but I will tell you, in the depths of an endurance binge, it is the greatest thing ever. It will change your life as it changed mine. And so with all that said, let's get into it. All right, I have Brady Holmer here. He is a science writer. He is a hell of a runner. He writes Physiologically Speaking, a Substack that I subscribe to and absolutely love. And in 2025, you ran the Boston Marathon. So that's what I want to talk to you about, because this coming weekend is the 130th running. It's going to happen on Monday, April the 20th. And so you ran it in 2025. What was the experience like?
Man, it was, I think I would say more than I expected in terms of the fanfare and it's a national holiday in the city of Boston for sure. I mean, they do shut down the whole city for it. It definitely exceeded my expectations. To be honest, I was never, I've been a runner my entire life. Running Boston was never something where I was like on my running bucket list. But a bunch of friends and I qualified for it and we decided to run it together. All of our families went out there. So it was a huge, fun sort of family trip. And, I was excited about it, but until I got there, I didn't really realize the scope of the Boston Marathon. And it was incredible. Not only, the race itself was obviously fun, but just the excitement around it, all of the history, all of the shopping, all of just the events, a ton of fun. And then the race itself was just, unlike anything I've ever experienced in a road race. It was people, fans 5 to 10 rows deep, basically the entire race. You were no quiet spots, never without people cheering for you. So it was just an incredible experience. Definitely something I want to do again. That was my first Boston, first and only one so far. But it was an incredible experience.
Okay, we're going to talk about why this race is significant among runners. I want to go through a list of factoids that I found and I liked. I'm probably going to throw some trivia at you as we go along. Okay, so number one, it is the oldest marathon in the country. It came in the year 1897. This was after the success of the very first Olympic marathon, which was held in 1896. Can you guess how many runners the very first Boston Marathon had?
Oh, gosh. Okay. So I want to say like 50.
Less. It was 15.
Wow.
15. Can you guess the first place time?
For males?
We'll get to that because there was no women until the 1970s.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So 1897, fastest time for Boston.
Yeah, I'm going to say 3.5 hours.
Actually faster. This surprised me. It was under 3. It was 2:55. Guy named John McDermott. Second place, 3 hours, 2 minutes. I was surprised at the speed at that point in time.
I am as well. Yeah.
They didn't have super shoes. They didn't have like specialized gear. They're just hauling. That's pretty good.
They didn't have anything. No, and funny story about that. Quick aside. I know we're in middle of our trivia, but I actually interviewed the winner of the I believe it was 68 marathon, Amby Burfoot. So he was a writer for Runner's World, and we were talking about the history of the Boston Marathon, and he was telling me that when he ran it and when he won it, they didn't even have water stops. No water stops, no fuel. So he's like, I didn't drink anything. I didn't eat anything during the entire race. The only water stops that they had, people stood on the side of the road and basically sprayed hoses at them. So up until, who knows, probably the mid 70s, they didn't even have water stations at these marathons, which is just insane to think about because people would not even think about running a marathon these days without water or, a pocket full of energy gels.
And so they would just open their mouth and get water sprayed in?
I guess so, yeah, just a little spray of water. Awesome. Which actually you probably get more than those little cups that you get anyway. Those are so ineffective, it's terrible.
Yeah, and you're trying to run with them in your hand. What was his time? What year did he run it? And what was his first place time?
He ran it in 68. I believe he won it with a 2:22.
That's moving. Especially in 1968.
Which is fast, but that won't even win the women's marathon today at Boston. So that's close to what it's funny. It's close to what I ran last year in 2025. I ran a 2:24. So if you were to think about it, I'd be close to winning the Boston Marathon when he ran it. And these days, 2:22 is kind of not even your, like a recreational amateur is running that time. So Things have changed for sure.
Next factoid. The first Boston Marathon was not actually 26.2 miles. It was 24.5 miles. Why? I don't know. I just found that interesting. Okay. Next factoid. Can you guess the age of the oldest finisher ever?
I want to say, I feel like that was recently, and I think I saw something about that, but I'm going to say 85.
You nailed it. 85.
Okay.
And a lady named Catherine, I'm going to say this last name wrong, Byers, Beiers. That was 2018, her finishing time. Honestly, why do we care at 85? But I'm just going to say it. It was 7 hours, 50 minutes, which is way faster than I would be able to finish that when I'm 85. But I'll also say last year, the year you ran it, there was a guy named Oscar Comaduran. He's from Chihuahua, Mexico. Age 81, he ran a sub 4.
That's absurd. Yeah.
358.
Very impressive.
358, 17 at 81 years old. I'll be honest, I don't even know if I could run a sub 4 right now.
Yeah, so Ed Whitlock, I believe is his name. He was the oldest person ever to break 3 hours in the marathon when he was 73 years old. He ran a 2:54 for the marathon. And then recently, so I think he's 85 now, or at least he was 85 when he ran this time, but he ran a 3:56 for the marathon at age 85. So pretty incredible there. The fact that, he could have qualified for Boston as an 18-year-old when he was 73 years old. Pretty remarkable.
I feel like your long-term running goal should be to beat his time when you were 75. That'll give you a long time horizon.
It's funny because I think about that a lot because I'm kind of at the stage in life where, I'm never going to be a professional athlete. And I really am trying to think of like the long game at this point. And it excites me to think about trying to sort of run those times. Like, how long can I run? So I'm 2:24 now. Can I run faster than that for like the next 5 to 10 years? But then, how long can I run a 2:30 marathon for? How long can I run a 2:40? It's fun that you can kind of start to set goals because most guys don't get faster as they age, but it's like, how can I still run fast and maintain my speed at these different ages? It becomes a different game. So, I'm looking forward to that. Not that I'm wishing, I don't want to be 70 years old. I'm happy being 33 right now. So not wishing that time away, but it's fun to think about doing that eventually someday.
I like it. So to go back to the point you made earlier, men's or women's, women were not allowed to run Boston until 1972. One, that surprised me. Two, we're going to give a shout out to a person named Catherine Switzer. So 1967, she signs up for the marathon under the alias KV Switzer. She starts off running the race, obviously the only woman in the race. A race official actually tries to grab her and stop her. He manages to get a hold of her. She breaks free and she finishes the marathon. I think it was like a 4-something time. So very first woman to do the marathon illegally, I guess you would call it.
Yeah, there's like a very famous picture of the guy trying to get her off the course. It's pretty cool. But yeah, very interesting story there, and go her, right?
Yes. Go her. So you mentioned how there's people 10 deep for most of the race. How many people do you think watch the race, stand on the course and watch?
Gosh, I mean, it has to be. Okay, is this something you have a fact for?
I
Because
have
I'm
a
very
fact
curious
for.
in the answer. Okay, gosh, I mean, I have to feel like it's like maybe I'm overdoing it. Whatever, 1 to 2 million.
You're overdoing it. It is
Okay.
500,000, but in context, that is 80% of the population of Boston. Now, obviously, it's not everyone in Boston. It's coming. People from all around the world come, but that is a huge influx of people. You might have experienced this running, but this is a giant party day if you're not running in Boston. So the bars in Boston on Marathon Monday, which is a big holiday, beer sales jump 200% compared to other weekends. Vodka sales jump 370%, which I believe because when I was in college, I went to college outside of Boston. People would go into the city and it was just like a big day. And all my friends who were living in Boston during the marathon, they're like, that's the biggest party day of the year. Also, final fact, you can fact check me on this. I believe it's the hardest marathon to qualify for, right?
Actually, I think that the New York Marathon may be a little bit harder in terms of
Really?
the time standards now. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What's the qualifying time for New York?
It's actually faster than Boston. It's 2:53. So almost a little bit harder to get into New York than it is to Boston.
Holy crap. And Boston, the qualifying time for this year, 18 to 34 age group, which you fall under, is 2:55. For women, that's for men. For women, it is 3:25. You might know the pace off your top of your head. I don't know that pace. What is a 2:55? What does that relate to?
Oh gosh, that would be 2:55. I think that's somewhere around a 6:40 to 6:45 minutes per mile pace, and that's for the males. It's going to be harder for me to do the female conversion there, but and an interesting thing about that is that the qualifying time. So say the qualifying time, meaning you have to run this time to even have a chance to get in. That's a 2:55, but because of the amount of people signing up and the quality of the people signing up, you actually have to run faster than that. So the people who made it in this year, you had to run 4 minutes, about 4.5 minutes faster than the qualifying time. So that means if you're a male 18 to 35, you don't get in unless you ran a 2:51. So you qualified for the race with a 2:55, but you didn't actually get to run the race unless you ran a 2:51 because of the sheer number of applicants.
Can you imagine if you had spent years trying to qualify for Boston and you run a marathon in 2:54, whatever qualifying marathon, you're like, oh my God, this is it. I've accomplished this feat. I can't wait for Boston. And then you submit your application. They're like, nah, you're actually too slow because everyone else is faster than you.
It's funny because one of my friends, he ran a 2:52 qualifying time. And so the cutoff, I think, was like a 2:52:30. So he got in by like a 30-second margin or something like that, which was pretty close. We were all happy about that. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer. And what do you say? Do you say that you were a Boston Marathon qualifier, or do you not? Like if you're somebody who ran, say a guy who ran a 2:53, but you didn't get in, do you say, oh, I qualified for the marathon? Because you didn't really get to race it.
Right.
So
what do you think this suggests?
Semantics, I guess.
What do you think this suggests for running? Is running becoming more popular, or are people just the training methods are better? What do you think?
I think it's a combination of both. I mean, it's certainly becoming more popular if you just look at the number of people applying for these marathons. I mean, 34,000, I think people applied for Boston in for the 2026 cycle. So just the number of applicants exploding, but obviously people are getting faster. I mean, if you have more people, you're obviously going to have a larger talent pool, but I just think people are putting in more time to train. There's technology. So I think, but technology is sort of still a level playing field at this point, because people will say, oh, it's the shoes. Well, sure. So that kind of explains why the times are getting faster, but everybody is wearing super shoes these days. So you would think that would be kind of like a way to level the playing field. I think training methods are getting a little bit smarter, and people are just putting more time into it. I think they're just enjoying it. And marathoning is it's kind of becoming like a status symbol recently almost. It's like your marathon time is, people will flaunt it, and wear their medals and wear their jackets. So I don't know. I don't know whether it's a running boom or a bubble that will eventually burst, probably. But right now it's just super popular. And I think people are training hard and putting a lot of time into it. So it's just people are getting faster across the board.
Before I ask you about your qualifying time and how you trained for everything, you mentioned super shoes. How have those changed the sport, and how do they actually affect running times? I've never actually run in super shoes.
Yeah, I mean, they are, until you've run in them, I think you will I think a lot of people maybe dismiss how they actually work, or if they actually work. But I mean, essentially what the super shoes are doing, it's a very broad term, but essentially it refers to a shoe that either has some sort of specialized foam, so like a foam in the sole, a carbon plate, so a carbon fiber plate that's embedded within the sole, or like a combination of the two. Mm-hmm. Most have a combination of the two. And so what they're doing is they're not really they're making you run faster, but indirectly. So basically they're just giving you energy return. So they're increasing your running efficiency. So when you put force down into that carbon plate, it's essentially acting like a spring.
Okay.
So you put a lot of force into that plate, into that foam, and it's going to give you energy return. And hence the 4% kind of labeling that Nike came out with when they first introduced these super shoes. It's like they make you 4%. They don't make you 4% faster, but they make you 4% more efficient. So they're just going to basically make it at the same pace. You're going to be using less energy, less effort at the same pace, essentially. So that's kind of how they're working. They definitely work. But what the interesting thing is, and a lot of the, not to get too deep into the research, but a lot of what the research is sort of showing these days is that people respond differently. It's not everybody who puts this shoe on is going to experience the same benefit. There are quote unquote responders to super shoes and non-responders. I think it has a lot to do with how you run. So your biomechanics certainly play a role in how well you're going to respond to these super shoes and how much of a benefit you're going to get. And your speed. I really think if you basically go to any marathon, everybody pretty much is wearing super shoes. I think there's a lot of FOMO going on there where people think I have to wear these because everybody's wearing them. I think that if you're male or female and you're running probably much slower than say like 3.5 hours for the marathon, you're probably not getting much of a benefit from the super shoes, because it takes a certain speed for those things to really give you that energy return.
Because you need the
force, you need the propulsion to get that energy return. Yes, exactly. But they definitely feel good on your feet, so there's something to that as well.
Do you have any idea how they would impact your marathon time, in a sense of like how much time are they actually taking off for you?
Oh man, I know it's so hard to quantify that, and I would love to run a marathon without them and then do one with them, kind of while I'm in like same course, same relative fitness level, super shoes versus non. I think that a reasonable estimate is probably 5 to 8 minutes.
Holy crap.
That it's going to take off my marathon time. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's pretty reasonable. That may be even like undershooting it. 5 minutes, at least 8 minutes might be kind of overestimating it, but it's certainly at least 5 minutes. I mean, in 2025, I ran a 2:24 at Boston. I think if you put me in regular shoes, I run a 2:28, maybe something like that. So it's big. It's not an insignificant difference.
What was qualifying for Boston like for you? How did you go about that?
I ran my qualifying time. I ran 2 marathons that both would have qualified me for Boston in 2020. So I ran them in 2024. I ran a 2:37 marathon, and then I ran a 2:26 at the Indianapolis Monumental Marathon. So that was, I guess, my true one that I submitted to get into Boston was the Indianapolis one.
And then you PR'd in Boston.
226. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. What was the training like for this, and where was your head going into this with training? Did you change anything because it was Boston and the stakes felt a little higher, or what?
No, nothing special. I wish I would have altered my training a bit to tailor it more to the Boston course, though.
How so?
So Boston, as I mentioned, is a net downhill. There are a lot of hills. So there are downhills and there are obviously uphills. Heartbreak Hill being the so-called Newton Hills, I guess, are the quote unquote toughest part of the course. But what I think people underestimate, what I myself underestimated, was, the first half is a lot of downhills. And what the downhills do is damage your muscles a lot because you're going down, you're getting these eccentric contractions, and it ruins your quads. It ruins your quads. So by the time I was done with the first half of the race and got into the uphill section, my quads were kind of just ruined because I went out a little too fast, to be honest.
As we do.
A little too aggressive, as it's impossible to avoid that. But I would have done some specific downhill training. So probably found some areas and done downhill intervals where you're basically just running hard downhill to sort of train your legs. It's essentially almost like providing like this armor to your legs when you do those in training. Because during the end of the race, that kind of really affected my form and stuff. So at one point I thought I was going to have to stop at like mile 20 to 22 just because my legs were just so sore and like almost unable to pick them up. So I would have changed that. Other than that, training is training. I think you just, regardless of the race, you do pretty much the same thing. But you do need to tailor, if you're doing a downhill course, kind of work on that and train the uphill stuff as well, because there are those Newton Hills, which are notoriously difficult.
Walk us through the day of the race. So morning, you wake up, what do you do?
With Boston, it gets very complicated too. So, and to be honest, compared to a lot of other marathons, the pre-race stuff kind of sucks because it's very, very difficult.
Is it the people or what?
No, not the people, just because there's so many runners, they have it. It's a well-oiled machine. I will give them that. I mean, they've been doing it for, 130 years. So you would expect that, but it's basically just the process of getting to the start line is just hard and it's time consuming, but I'll go through, the day there. So I think, the race doesn't start till it started till at 10, I think 10 or 10:30, in the morning, which is actually a pretty late start for a marathon. So I woke up, probably 5:30, something like that, putzed around, had some coffee, had, I think, a bagel and a banana with some peanut butter. That's my typical pre-race breakfast, before a marathon. And for a lot of races, even if it's a marathon, I generally won't have a lot to eat beforehand just because they start at like 6 a.m. Yeah. So I'll have like a banana and then you're going to eat during the race. You're going to have energy gels. So I don't really find the need to eat a breakfast. But with Boston, you're not running till 10 o'clock. So you're waking up at 6, you gotta have something. You're gonna be starving by the time you get to the start of the race. But obviously you don't want to have like a full continental breakfast. So wake up, have breakfast, kind of chat with my friends. And then you basically have to start the process like 2 or 3 hours before your start time of go to the race to get to your corral, because you have a designated corral based on your time that you submitted. But most runners will take a bus. So you have to get on a bus a couple of hours before. They're going to take you from downtown Boston, because we actually didn't stay in downtown Boston. We stayed halfway in between. But if you're staying in downtown, you get on a bus. They trek you the 26 miles, to the start line. Then you get out. You go to the waiting area, basically where all the runners are, all the anxious energy. Runners are sitting around. Yeah. They're jogging. They're eating. They're just, waiting for 30 minutes to use the porta potty a few times before the race, as, everybody typically has to do. But basically you wait in this holding area for, I guess, however long you're there. But, generally I think we were there for 60 to 90 minutes basically. And then they will call you to the corral. So they'll say, okay, if you're in corral A, now's your time to go. So then you will go to the corral or to the entrance to the corral. You'll wait in a line to get to the corral. And then you'll walk half a mile through basically just this chute to the start line. So that takes another half an hour. So, this whole process pretty much takes, by the time you get to the starting area, the loading dock, we'll call it, it takes like probably 2 to 2.5 hours of just sort of waiting around.
They don't talk about this in all the aura and glory
No.
of Boston.
They don't talk about it. It is not glamorous. It's not glamorous at all.
It sounds like
unless you're an elite athlete.
Yeah, it sounds like you're going through like TSA. Like this just sounds to me like, oh, I had to drive to the airport. It took forever. Then I had to do this, and I had to get in this cattle chute to go through this process. This does not sound fun, but.
Yeah, no, it's funny that you mentioned that because it is. It's like almost going through TSA. You know, you drop your stuff off before you get into the line. You know, all your clothes that you've been wearing to stay warm, you ditch those as you walk to the start line. You sort of are like taking in your energy gels. You're using the portalette one last time before you actually get to the start line. Because once you're there, you're not moving. Like once you're at the start line, you're in this big group of people and you're not there. But then you do get to the start line, and then that's kind of where you start. It's funny, like I'm getting like the chills, kind of like thinking about when I was standing there on the start line. But you'll stand on the start line again. Once you get there, you're standing for probably another 30 minutes. And this is kind of why I say it sucks compared to a lot of the other races, because for most marathons, unless it's like a major marathon, most low-key marathons, I'm going to be able to just do my warm-up and pretty much just like hop the fence and get on the start line where I need to be 2 minutes before the race starts. I'm all warmed up. My routine is sort of dialed in. Throw everything that you know about that out the window when you get to Boston. And that's why you just have to be flexible, which for type A runners who love their routine, love their fueling, love their warm up, you have to like throw that out the window. And I just had to like get that mindset out of my head, because you're not going to be able to do any of it. You're going to be standing for 30 minutes and then you're just going to be expected to go when they shoot that starting gun off cold, basically. So I'm going from standing to running a 5 minute and 20-second mile, you know, within the span of seconds. Little uncomfortable, but you know, that's what you do and everybody does it. So you're just kind of in it with the crowd.
Did you see anyone just mentally spiraling about this because they couldn't do all the things they had planned to do? Like they didn't understand that it was going to be this TSA-like process?
Not really, but I'm sure that within the minds of all the runners, like there are some who are sort of freaking out. And I joke about it now, but it's really something that I was like, okay, you just have to be cool with this. And that's why I talk about like the whole pressure thing. I'm like, you know what? The time I run today doesn't really matter, and you're going to run good no matter what. You just got to because you could freak yourself out. You could just totally psych yourself out and think you're going to run bad. You just have to sort of enjoy it and go with the flow, really, and realize that everybody's doing it. I think that helps a little bit. You're like, it's me and thousands of other runners who are doing the same thing. Like, unless you're an elite athlete, you're not going to get that special treatment of, oh, I can do my warm up and just get right on the start line.
So gun sounds. You start running. You said you came out of the gate hot. Were you trying to PR this, or were you like, I'm just going to see what happens?
It was mostly just going to see what happens. But I mean, like I said, in the back of my mind, I kind of knew that I knew Boston was a hard course, but I'm still relatively new to marathoning. That Boston was only my third ever marathon. So I was pretty confident that I was going to PR, just with regard to my training and just the fact that I had run a 2:26 earlier and I knew I was in better shape. And that Boston, it's a hard course, but it's not a slow course. It can be fast if you run it right. So I was kind of confident I was going to PR. And after I went through halfway pretty fast, I think I ran the first half marathon in an hour and 11 minutes. So I was a slight positive split. I ran slower in the second half, but I figured I would PR. And especially after going through the first few miles, I mean, I think I was running under 5 minutes and 20 seconds per mile for the first 3 or 4. Granted, you're going downhill, and I think that's what set me up for disaster later. But it feels easy, and that's the trap that marathons get you into. I mean, it should feel easy, but you know, you're running 5 minutes and 20 seconds per mile, and it's like, oh, I can talk to the people next to me, and you're in a crowd, so the adrenaline there certainly helps.
Yeah. What were your most memorable sections of the race, for better or worse?
Yeah, not really any. I wouldn't say there were any bad sections, but definitely the most memorable section was you pass. Oh my gosh, the name of the college, I can't remember. It's an all women's
Wellesley?
college, Wellesley College. Yeah, and basically just the sororities are lining the course, and they're all just there screaming and giving. I think I gave like 500 high fives at that point. There are pictures of me on the website, like, because they take photos during the race of me just like high fiving these sorority girls the entire time. So that was definitely one of the most memorable sections. I would say the Newton Hills were more of a fun section. This was one of my hot takes about the Boston Marathon, but I think the quote unquote Heartbreak Hill sort of overrated. I mean, I didn't find that it was that much of a hill at all. I think it's the positioning of the hill versus the actual hill itself.
Is it later?
I mean, it's at mile 20, I think. Mile 18 to 20 is when it happens. So yeah, if you run a dumb race, you're going to be tanked by then, and it's going to be a terrible hill. But I try to at least, race where conserving energy first half, kind of stronger the second half. And so the hills were more fun because I was passing a lot of people who went out a little too hot. So those were pretty memorable. And then obviously just that finish, I mean, insane. You basically go kind of up this hill under a bridge, and then you turn this corner, and then you basically just have a half-mile straight shot to the finish line. And I mean, it's just like you forget everything that's just happening because people are, and you can't even hear anything that's going on, and you just like sprint your ass off to the finish, basically.
Awesome. So you can see it from a half mile away, and it's just like there it is.
It's good and bad because it just feels like it's forever off. But it's so fun because you're at the top of the hill and you're basically just descending into the finish line and running as fast as you can. Yeah, so it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
What did you eat along the way?
Just energy gels. Yeah. So like carbohydrate energy gels. Basically, I had 5 or 6 of them probably. So carb fueling and marathoning is like a whole hot topic these days. I probably took in about like two of those gels per hour, which is about 60 to 75 grams of carbohydrates per hour, which was kind of my goal.
What is your go-to gel?
For Boston, I actually use a combination. There's a brand called Science and Sport that I really like because they're sort of like a watery consistency.
Not super
and they go
gooey.
Not very viscous. Yeah, exactly. And then there's a brand called Morton, which those are sort of the premier energy gels. But the problem is they are designed in a certain way. They're in this very viscous gel. And you kind of have to chew it, which I don't really like because I don't want to chew anything while I'm running 5 minutes per mile. It's kind of difficult.
Where do you think people go wrong with fueling for marathons?
I think in a couple areas, probably. I think the first would just be not practicing the fueling enough in training. So there's the whole idea of gut training. Basically, your gut can train to handle more food or more carbohydrates while you're exercising just by using carbs when you're exercising. So when you're out on training runs, when you're doing your long runs in preparation for the marathon, you need to basically try to mimic what you're going to do on race day so that your stomach can tolerate it. Because if you are just maybe fasting during your runs, or you're just taking in a little bit of carbohydrates when you're training, and then you show up on race day and expect to pound 2 to 3 gels per hour, like it's not going to work. You're going to get GI distress. Your body just can't absorb that many carbs. But the gut can be trained. It's pretty well known.
Number one thing, well, obviously you want to fuel the work, but also the main issue is that people's guts go south mid-race, and now you got to stop because your stomach is just in a knot, and you're done.
It's funny, I've been running for so long, I've never experienced anything during a race that has actually caused me to stop. Generally, TMI, but I take care of business before the race actually starts. So I feel like by the time the race is happening, there's not much left to do. But it really just does come down to that smart fueling. Like don't fuel certainly more than maybe you have during training. That's kind of a recipe for disaster, I think.
Do you think about what you eat the day before as it relates to that, or do you not care?
Yes, I think more so the day before. Not only, it's complicated, and this is still something that I haven't really honed down, and it's not just the day before, Michael. I would say it's probably the entire week before. I don't make drastic dietary changes, but I cut a lot of stuff out. Yeah. So basically 5 days out from the marathon, I will pretty much try to start cutting out like any vegetables and lots of fiber, just to kind of like reduce, how much like bulk you're eating. I don't know. Just, I think it's not like for like a weight perspective, but just from like you got less to get out, I guess. And less, anything that has a chance of maybe upsetting your stomach, you basically just cut out. So like keep it simple, but obviously don't change it too much because your body's used to eating what you're used to eating. So I think the day, and then, so 5 days out, I'm kind of like trying to cut out a lot of fiber. And I think the day before, again, just kind of eat what you normally would. I tend to reduce protein a little bit, just kind of eat a little more carbs just to make sure you're going into the race with enough carbohydrate stores. But if you're going to be fueling the day of, I don't think maybe it's as important. Avoiding stuff, I think, is more important than what you actually eat, to be honest. Don't eat anything weird, but like just eat what you normally would and make sure to get the carbs you're normally eating. And then on race day, you're going to eat a good breakfast. You're going to fuel during the race. So kind of what you ate the day before isn't that important. And you're tapered. I think a lot of people discount. So I'm sure you've heard of carb loading. You know, the idea of carb loading, like, oh, you just want to pound the pasta and rice and stuff the week of the marathon. I have my thoughts about it. I don't really think the way most people do it isn't effective. And I don't really even think it's necessary, because if you're eating adequate carbs during training, you're already you're trying to fuel your training. So going into the race, you know, you've been fueling your training good. Well, the week or two before the race, you're decreasing your training volume. It's called a taper, and it's pretty common before a marathon. So you're going to reduce your training volume. You're going to run less. So that's automatically, if you eat the same and run less, your glycogen stores they're going to be saturated going into the race, because you are, say, eating the same amount of carbs, but you're running less. So you're just not depleting your glycogen stores. So I think people overthink. I think runners overthink carbohydrate loading. Just like eat enough and you're going to be good going into the race. And if you fuel correctly, you'll be fine.
It's like that famous scene from The Office where Michael Scott runs a 5K, eats like all the fettuccine like Alfredo
10 minutes before. Do not do that. Yeah. And I think the idea too is just like, oh, you need to pound like plates of pasta. But the idea is really just, you're going to eat a little less protein and fat. You're just going to make your diet more carbs compared to those other you don't need to eat more calories overall. I mean, you can, that's fine. You probably should, like, you know, fuel yourself good before the race, but you're just eating more percentage of carbs versus protein and fats in your diet in that week. And you're going to kind of go into the race pretty carb replete.
Sounds very practical. So you cross the finish line. What was that like? And what was the first thing you did after crossing?
Well, it was obviously, I mean, when you cross any finish line, it's like a relief. I was obviously stoked because I ran, you know, a 2-minute PR. I was also celebrating. So the guy who finished like right behind me, he was part of this. It was called the Project 3, and it was sponsored by Puma. Basically, Puma took a bunch of kind of recreational level runners, guys like myself, and sort of sponsored them for this race. So they gave them shoes, they gave them gear. I think they paid for their trip probably. And then there were incentives basically. So if you were the fastest out of that project, I think you got like $1,000. And if you ran a personal record, you got, I think it was like $2,000. And he PR'd by, I think, a minute. So he was like, he was all happy. I think he was from France.
Awesome.
And he was all excited. I'm like, oh, good job. You know, we were congratulating each other. And he goes, yeah, man, I just PR'd and I got like $2,000 or something. So I was celebrating with him, kind of relishing in, you know, they put the medal on your neck and then you're walking a lot and you're basically just kind of like flooded with endorphins for about the next 5 to 10 minutes. And then panic set in because I had to find my family and friends.
Good luck.
Which was, I didn't have my phone. You know, cause it's a point to point. So it's not like you started where you finished and you have your bag that you can get.
Do you think that anyone could qualify for Boston with enough training? What are your thoughts on that? Especially in the context of decreasing qualifying times, the times getting shorter. What are your thoughts there?
I think that many people have the potential to do it. I certainly don't think that everybody has just the innate ability to do it. And I don't say that to try to be like elitist or gatekeeping in running. I just think, you know, there are just some people who probably aren't naturally born to run, and regardless of how much time they put in, they just might not qualify for Boston. And I think that's okay. That doesn't need to be a goal for everybody. But I think most people, you know, if you really set it as a goal and are willing to put in the time, because it will take time unless you're like an outlier in terms of talent, I think that, yeah, they could probably qualify. I do think that it gets relatively maybe easier the older you get, because the pool narrows a little bit, right? So if you're in my age group, 18 to 35, pool is huge, lots of talent, lots of young guys, lots of young gals with a lot of talent. Okay, it's hard. But if you're maintaining fitness when you're 40, 50, 60, if you're a 60-year-old and you're a pretty fit, kick-ass 60-year-old, you might have an easier time getting into Boston because the pool is lower, the times maybe get relatively easier to sort of achieve. But yeah, so I guess the short answer there is, I think yes, you know, if it's really a goal of yours, if you have some experience in sports and are willing to put in several hours per week is what it's going to take, then yeah, I think most people could.
Yeah, because you were running, what'd you say, about 80 miles a week? That's a lot of time running.
Yeah, it is a lot of time running. And I mean, a funny story is just, like I said, I've been a runner my entire life. And the first marathon I ever ran, so I've technically run 4 at this point. I ran one in 2018, I want to say it was on a whim, but I was injured during it. I think I was running 10 or 20 miles per week and not even training for a marathon. But I mean, I ran a 2:55 in like the first marathon off of no training. But so, for Boston, I was running 80 miles per week. For somebody with some talent, I mean, I don't think it requires 80 miles per week. I mean, it just depends on like the goal you want to run. But, probably you're not going to get anywhere close with less than, 50 probably miles a week. I mean, there's a certain level it just takes to, if you want to train for 26 miles of running, you have to run a certain amount.
Yeah. Are you following the top runners?
A little bit. I mean, pro running these days is, gosh, I don't know. It's kind of a shit show, for a lack of a better term.
Why's
I think
that?
just because every time you turn your head, it seems like another one of these top runners is getting busted for using performance-enhancing drugs. Somebody wins a marathon, a couple months later, prior New York City Marathon champ, or one of the guys just got busted, I think, for using performance-enhancing drugs. So it kind of sucks to be a fan of the sport sometimes. Luckily, none of our American guys or gals have gotten really busted for anything like that. So, but I do follow the sport. So for the Boston, we have on the men's side, we have Connor Mance and Clayton Young. These are two guys from BYU, Brigham Young.
Oh, awesome. They both
ran in the Olympics this year. They're like best friends. They both post a lot on YouTube, which is kind of fun. So they're like, men of the people. They like to kind of interact. So I would keep an eye out for both of them. That should be exciting. Connor Mance especially. So he's the American record holder. I mean, heck, he's got a shot to win it. I mean, it's possible. He could possibly win the Boston Marathon, which would be insane. And that would be very cool. So I would keep an eye out for that. And then on the women's side, there's a woman named Emily Sisson. She's the American record holder. She's going to be running it. So keep an eye out for her. And then I think both the returning champs of Boston are running. They're both from Africa. I think Kenya or Ethiopia from both of these runners. So 2 returning champs coming. But yeah, the men especially, I think there's a lot of hype around Connor and Clayton. Both of them are returning from injury. So there's kind of a fun story there.
Question of whether it'll happen or not.
Yeah. It'll be exciting to root for him, though.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on to talk Boston with us. And I will also note before we close, you got your Boston jacket on right now.
I do.
And it's awesome.
The Boston jacket. I referred to it incorrectly, I guess, on X at one point as a finisher's jacket. I mean, you don't really get it when you finish. We were talking before we started, anybody can buy it. I mean, you obviously don't want to be a poser wearing this jacket when you haven't run the race, but yeah, you get this at the expo. It's sort of your rite of passage. And they have a different one every year. So you can get this, I think the colors change and stuff every year, but you can also get patches. So you can keep this jacket and put like your years that you ran it on there. So awesome. A lot of people, you'll see these like 70-year-old guys walking around the expo and they have like this jacket from 1970 with like 25 patches on it. So it's cool. I mean, there's so much history of the race. It's awesome. And so I would encourage everybody to watch it. It's weird that it happens on a Monday, but just stream it secretly at work, I guess, while you on your phone or something.
There you go. I like it. Well, may there be many more Boston jackets in your future. And thanks again for coming on, man.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael. This was fun.
Welcome back to the show. So the New York Times recently ran an opinion piece that was rather pro ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods we often think of as junk foods. So this was a kind of surprising piece, but the authors made some great points. But of course, this led to all sorts of drama with plenty of readers writing in, and the New York Times ran their rebuttals. Big old drama over ultra-processed foods. Now, ultra-processed foods are obviously a very hot topic in the health world. I'm sure you've seen the word pop up on all sorts of stories and places telling you to never, under any circumstances, eat those foods. But it turns out it's actually a lot more complicated, and ultra-processed foods can actually be useful if you think about them in the right way. So in order to help us think about them in a more productive way, I'm bringing on an old friend. His name is Dr. Mike Roussell. He got his PhD in nutrition from Penn State. He has gone on to work with NBA players, with really busy tech executives, and with everyday people. And he is really great at helping people dial in what they eat in a way that helps them reach their goals. And Dr. Mike, by the way, also has a really fantastic Substack with an even better name. It is called Dad Bod Rebuilt. And this guy would know because he is a father of 4 teenagers. They are great kids, but they are a lot of work. Yet he has managed to stay extremely fit and eat very well. So he's going to give us some lessons now. Dr. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me. This is awesome.
So we're going to talk about ultra-processed foods, which is a hot topic, became somewhat hotter because the New York Times, these two scientists run this piece called "We Shouldn't Want to Eat Like Our Grandparents." And they basically point out there's this push towards eat real food, which is what our grandparents and great-grandparents ate, but malnutrition was rampant in the past. So they're pointing out how basically this modern food system takes a ton of crap. At the same time, it's really been sort of a miracle overall for human health in terms of getting people fed, avoiding malnutrition. Now, of course, when you publish a piece like this, there's going to be people who clap back and people are like, yeah, but why is everyone obese? Why is diabetes rampant? Why is XYZ? So what was your take when you looked at those pieces?
I sort of feel similar to the authors in that I think what we've done with food is amazing. You know, when you look at the landscape of food and nutrition and malnutrition, and we were talking in the US specifically, it's so much less than it ever was. Like, it's not eradicated because there's still, people dealing with this, but compared to what it used to be, and if you look at even just the tenor of nutrition research, it's so much fewer research is about preventing malnutrition. Right. And it's all about actually dealing with diseases of overnutrition.
Right.
So,
we've had to shift. Yeah, in the past, it was like people were dying because they weren't getting enough of nutrient X, Y, Z. And so we start to realize this, and the government comes in and goes, okay, well, maybe we should add nutrition X, Y, Z to wheat or whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden, you start to see all these people surviving because we've solved that problem with sciencing our food effectively.
Right. Yeah, 100%. If you look at even just how the RDAs are determined from a micronutrient perspective, it's what's the level that we need to make sure that, 2 standard deviations above the mean gets enough of this nutrient.
Yeah,
right?
so RDA is basically the recommended daily allowance of vitamins, minerals, protein, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's all in I think the telling piece about it is the definition is purely around preventing disease of malnutrition.
Yeah.
So when those were created, that is what everyone was focused on. And I don't think oftentimes ultra-processed foods and food manufacturing and food science all kind of get lumped in together as one thing, and then it becomes negative, right? But I think what we've done from a nutritional perspective to eradicate, the easy pickings of malnutrition is incredible. The Steve Jobs unintended consequence of that is companies got really good at doing different things with food. And then these companies, their jobs are to make money. You make money by selling food. How do you sell more food, right? You make it less expensive, you make it last longer on the shelf, you make it taste better, and all of those things. And that's what brings you into ultra-processed food. And I think it was funny because we were going to, sit and talk about this, and I have my youngest is 11, and he gets on the bus right now later than everybody else. So in the morning, we just kind of can chop it up while he's getting ready for school. And he said to me, he's like, Dad, because what did I do? There's a chicken finger chain called Raising Cane's.
Oh yeah.
And so,
I'm familiar.
I made for the kids like this knockoff high protein, low fat Raising Cane sauce with Greek yogurt and like low fat sour cream instead of mayonnaise. And they thought it was amazing. My son was like, wait. High protein Raising Cane sauce? How did I not know this existed?
You got a business idea, man.
So Joseph, my youngest, he had this in his mind. He's like, Dad, what if we go to the store and get all of the ingredients to make Cool Ranch Doritos, and then we make them tonight after school? And I was like, Joseph, it's like, that is a great thing to do. However, Cool Ranch Doritos are ultra-processed foods. And by definition, we cannot make them in our kitchen. Like, we don't have the tools, the machinery to actually make that. I was like, Because I'm sure you've had a tortilla chip,
Right.
and a tortilla chip and a Cool Ranch Dorito, they do not taste the same
No.
at all. And, for me, like that's the crux. And I do a lot of work with student athletes, high school student athletes, collegiate student athletes, and then also, with my own kids. And that's one of the things, like with ultra processed foods, really talk about like the word ultra processed food with them as much. But these are things that we can't make in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware that these things are also really easy to consume.
Yeah.
Like you could, I laugh, like you could take a Pizza Hut pizza, which is not the same one that they had when we were kids, right? And you could, if you had no teeth, you could still eat it.
Right. You can gum that. Just gum it right down.
Right, which is one of the things, like one of the characteristics of with ultra processed foods, there's a research study showed that you can eat more calories per bite, like faster.
Yeah, so let's actually talk about this. Are you talking about the Kevin Hall study?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll quickly walk through that. This guy, and I'm probably going to get the specifics wrong, but basically what this guy did is he took a group of people, put them in like a metabolic ward, right? And which is where you're counting. Actually, you walk us through it. You have the PhD. What am I doing here?
It was good. No, I was drinking my tea and getting ready to hear it. So basically, these metabolic wards, there aren't a lot of them because they're pretty extensive, but it's an extreme controlled environment where they're measuring gas exchange from the people that are there. They're weighing and measuring all the food that's going in. So they truly know what has entered the human and what has exited the human from down to the periodic table of elements. Yeah. And you could do some really cool research, but there aren't a lot of places that have these facilities, as you can imagine.
Not cheap.
Yeah. And so what they started, one of the things they did was they were looking at ultra processed foods versus non-processed foods and consumption patterns, and when they provide people with food, what happens. And one of the most interesting findings is that with ultra processed foods, you can just eat more calories per bite and more calories per time than non-processed foods.
Yeah.
And that is something that people don't consider.
So, and in the study, they fed them meals that were matched, very similar meals. They're matched for like protein, and they basically shove the food into the ward, and they say, okay, eat until you're full. And so for whatever it was, a week, they're eating these non-processed versions of the food. The other week, they're eating the ultra-processed versions of the food. And then they're saying, okay, well, how much did people actually eat? And we told them, just eat until you're full. When they eat the ultra-processed version, they eat it's like 500 extra calories a day. And it goes back to the fact, to your point about you can just gum this stuff down and it's not as filling. People just eat the food faster and there's more calories per bite in general. So if you're eating faster and the food has more calories, all of a sudden you've eaten a lot more food without necessarily meaning to or realizing. And then that in turn, where the whole health argument comes in, is that you get people who end up eating more than they're burning food-wise. So people gain weight, and then health problems come in when people tip into obesity, more or less. So it's not like the ultra-processed food, I mean, maybe you could argue it is. It's not like it's inherently evil. It's more just people tend to eat more of it, and when you eat more of something, you might tip into obesity, and then there's health implications with that.
Yeah, I think your verbiage of inherently evil is a good one, because I think when we start putting this evil versus good veil over foods that we eat, companies that make the food, etc., it's not very useful, because I actually think these different kinds of foods have utility in different places. And with young athletes, it's a wonderful dichotomy, because for a young athlete who's burning a lot of calories, to meet their calorie needs, to do it with what I would consider minimally processed foods. So these are foods essentially in their, natural is such a loaded term, and so I apologize for using it, natural state, imagine a carrot, right? Or something that's been manually processed to extract a nutrient like olive oil, right? So the olive has been squeezed, the oil is extracted, and so you have olive oil. So those two, there's like this 4-tier system for food processing. Those are the first 2 tiers, and I group those together and just call them minimally processed foods.
Yeah.
So another example, like oats, for example, would be a minimally processed food. Like it's been manually mashed so you can actually, consume it.
Yeah. And then just so people kind of understand, the ultra processed version of like let's take oats for an example. If you just have the oats that have been rolled over so you can have them in your oatmeal, that's minimally processed. But when you take the oats and you bind them in sugar and you throw in chocolate chips and raisins and like sugar dusting and frosting on the top, and now you have the sort of like oatmeal bar, now we're getting into ultra processed territory. And you're wrapping it, you're throwing in all these preservatives, you're doing all these things so it'll sit on the shelf for a long time. 1, 2, it will taste so much damn better than your plain oatmeal. Like it's just like this explosion of flavor in your mouth.
So the next one would be there's unprocessed, and then it's depending on how you look at it, like culinary or manually processed, which is like the oat, and then there's processed foods. Processed foods you could still make in your own kitchen, and they usually have salt, sugar, fat added to them, or some preservatives, right? So salt is often a very common preservative. So processed foods that generally people love, like a nice salami, like that sort of thing, sausage, like that food is also delicious, but it's a processed food because they've added the salt and some of the maybe nitrates for the preservative. So in your example of oatmeal, something I grew up on as a kid just because we didn't know any better, like the apple cinnamon instant oatmeal packets, right? Yeah. So they take that, they've added sugar to oatmeal, that becomes processed. Ultra processed would be one step further, which you further elaborated. They've added other things. It's now a bar. It's coated in this delicious coating. You could not make this because you don't have an extrusion machine in your kitchen, right? So you couldn't make it, and it'll last on the shelf for 2.5 years. So that would be ultra processed. And that's like the evolution of these things.
Yeah.
And just because it could last for 2 years and is coated in sugar, and you could probably eat it without teeth, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Because if I'm looking at an athlete who is playing 2 games in 90-degree weather with a 50-minute break in between, what I need that athlete to eat in between is something that they're going to be able to consume very quickly, taste good because they're going to want to eat it because they're too hot to really want to consume, but we need to get them the calories, something that's going to be digested quickly. Like basically most of what would check the box for an ultra-processed food. And so it really becomes down to where are you going to use this food in your life? That's where ultra-processed foods can be really good. Protein powder is a great example. Protein powders, definitely. Like try making whey protein isolate in your kitchen. Like good luck, right? Like you can't get an ion exchange whey extractor off of Facebook Marketplace. But
I don't know. You ever been to Vegas? I think I could probably get you one in about 20 minutes.
But that is a great food. That's a great nutritional tool to have, and it helps all kinds of people meet their protein needs on a consistent basis. So, where we started talking about this, talk about the Kevin Hall study and ultra-processed foods that you can eat them faster and they taste better, that's really where the problem comes in, because you would look at something and say, I'm going to eat this because it's less expensive, more convenient. Oh, by the way, it also has 500 calories. And you can eat it in 6.5 seconds.
Yeah. I think
that's the problem.
An extreme example would be, let's say you had 2 slices of Domino's pizza. Anyone could eat that in 2 minutes, and you would go, you know what sounds great right now? A 3rd slice of Domino's pizza. If you had 500 calories in apples, oh my God, you could probably only eat 3 of them, which would be 300 calories. And they'd be like, oh my God, I'm so full off of these apples. I do not want to eat another apple for at least 24 hours. And so then you do the math and you're like, oh, I could see how if you were eating mostly less processed food, you're just going to end up eating less over the course of a day compared to if you're getting your food mainly from ultra processed stuff. And so it just pushes people into too much effectively.
Exactly. And I think one of the other interesting pieces about that too and it's on the food business side, is one of the things that gets stripped out of food is, as it moves down the processing chain, are vitamins and fiber, right? Because in order to consume it faster and easier, you need to remove the roughage. And oftentimes the roughage, especially like in grains, is where these nutrients are housed. And so right now, like I was just talking to someone who was at Expo West, and he was saying he expected it to be all about creatine, right? Because creatine is like really hot right now again. But it was all about fiber. And I think that to me is really interesting because I have long felt fiber is like one of the most underrated nutrients. Like if you were to look at what should you focus on to improve your overall nutrition, you focus on your protein intake and you focus on your fiber intake.
Why is that with fiber?
Well, because fiber tracks with other food properties that's really helpful.
Okay.
So if you are choosing higher fiber foods, so you're eating broccoli, you're eating spinach, you're eating beans, you're eating lentils, you're eating brown rice, you're eating whole grain bread. So you're eating all these foods that are going to require a lot more chewing, and they're going to require a lot more time to eat. It's like kind of basically the opposite of the ultra processed foods. But what's happening now is that fiber is becoming an additive.
Right.
And this was years ago, 10 years ago. I was giving a talk at the P Performance, this gym in Manhattan that was run by, one of my mentors, Joe Dowdell, and was talking about, and that was right when Quest bars came out. And Quest, they were like really popular, like when they first hit. And they were one of the first brands to really make it with these functional fibers to make up a lot of the bar. So if you looked at the bar, it had 20 grams of fiber. And so one of the trainers raised their hand because we were talking about fiber. And he's like, yeah, but is this all the same? Because if I eat a Quest bar and get 15 grams of fiber, or I eat a cup and a half of beans and get 10 to 15 grams of fiber, I feel a lot different.
Yeah.
And so how science will then talk about this differently is they call it intact fiber, right? Versus functional fiber. And so you really want to focus on intact fiber, because just like protein was such a buzzword, it started getting added to everything. And it was like, if it had protein, it had to be good. That's where it's going with fiber now. But it's all of these ultra processed foods that are having prebiotic fibers or other types of fibers added to them that aren't what I really think what we're going to find. They're not going to have the same effects.
Yeah.
They're not going to have the same satiety effects. They're not going to have the same effects on your GI tract. And so there is such a value in these minimally processed foods because of the nutrient package that they all bring. But ultra processed and processed foods definitely have a place because they have really good functionality in our lives.
Meaning they're convenient. It's like, let's give protein as an example. If I was to try and carry around the least processed type of protein I could, I might fill a Ziploc bag full of grilled chicken and carry it around in my backpack as I fly around, which is weird. And also, like, is it going to spoil? Is it going to smell weird? Whereas if I go, all right, I got a 15-hour flight, I want to eat something that's not terrible, I want to get some protein, here's your protein bar. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. It's in a package. I can eat it. You know what? Would the grilled chicken be better? Yeah, but I'm on a 15-hour flight. Like, that's not going to work. So a lot of these foods that are kind of like I guess I would call them fitnessy foods, just sort of give you an option that's more practical. Is it optimal? Probably not. Is it more practical? And is it better than going, well, I'm just going to sit on this flight and eat Doritos and Chex Mix and a Coca-Cola? Yes, probably. So it just sort of comes down to like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good in a way.
Yeah. Well, I think what it also does is it doesn't give you the form in which you consume nutrients changes the experience. And so we've known, we talked about the Kevin Hall study, but this really goes back to Barbara Rolls, who was a professor when I was at Penn State with her energy density work, which was that basically if, the volume of food that you eat, it drives, which is the weight of the food that you're consuming, is the main factor, not the calories.
Yeah.
And
how much room it takes up in your stomach per calorie, effectively.
Yes. Yes. And so like if you ate a pound, like they would do this with kids. So they would give them macaroni and cheese. And then they would give them macaroni and cheese, but they would blend in like zucchini and squash. and they would give them the same amount of weight, but the calories were different because there was, zucchini and squash has like no calories. And the kids would be just as full, but they would eat significantly less calories when there was the vegetables blended into it. So it just goes to show infants have it because they can actually regulate calorie intake if they manipulate calorie content of formula. Like infants will stop based on the calories consumed. But they're very quickly in life, that goes out the window and it's all weight and volume. And so when we think, hey, I'm going to have this protein bar, 25 grams of protein, and then in your mind, you're thinking, I'm eating protein, it's satiating, and all these other things. You lose that when you eat it in the bar form or you drink it in the shake form. Like research from Heather Leidy, who's just a prolific protein researcher, she showed years ago that the satiety or the fullness that you feel after drinking a protein shake versus after eating whole protein is significantly different. One of the reasons like people tout protein is because it's satiety, but when you drink a protein shake, it's like nothing. It's like it's like eating rice. Like the satiety value is extremely small.
So when you're working with clients and you've worked with people, you've worked with NBA players, you've worked with busy tech execs, you've worked with just everyday people, how do you tell them to use this? And I remember at one point you did like a ultra processed food challenge where you challenged all these people you work with, like, don't eat any ultra processed food. And you got some really interesting results. So tell me what that is like and what you tell people to actually do.
Yeah, so I have a challenge. I call it like the 30-day minimally processed food challenge, which basically walks you through a new lesson every day on increasing your awareness around food processing, and then also how do you do this. One of the things that I do when I'm working with people in this is, for the most part, everybody is in the I need to control the amount of calories that I'm consuming business. There are very few people that need more calories. It's more athletes, younger, student athletes or college athletes, like they need to consume more calories. Everybody else is, how do I control or hold back calorie consumption, right? And except for maybe a guy like you. And so for those, for us mere mortals who are looking to not overconsume, minimally processed foods becomes the battle cry because it allows you to eat more while maintaining that calorie consumption. And then we layer in ultra processed foods, which I consider convenience foods, to help us marry our nutrition goals with our lifestyles. You gave a great example of when you're on a plane, that's the way to go. One of the things, like the office with the company that I work for is in Rhode Island. And so when I travel down there, I will do prepackaged overnight oats, which has the protein, carbohydrate, like everything just in there. And I can make 3 and I throw it in my bag and I know it can sit in the refrigerator at the hotel and it's breakfast taken care of. And so it's use it for convenience so you can maintain your plan, but don't rely on it as the primary source of nutrition. Because I really find traveling, is extremely difficult because fruit and vegetable consumption is hard, and everything has salt and sugar. Even when you go out to eat, and you're like, this salad should have no business being 1,200 calories.
Yeah, dude.
And it's so, especially restaurants that will have the calorie, counts there.
Counts, yeah.
And you're like, man, I can't get anything for 500 calories. Or I could go into my kitchen and I could make a plate of food that you would look at and be like, I am never going to finish this, that has 500 calories.
Totally.
That really for me is the challenge between minimally processed and then processed or ultra processed in your everyday life.
So when I was writing my book, Scarcity Brain, we talked about this a lot. And you had a really interesting and I think important point where, and this came up in these New York Times pieces, that the food industry gets so much crap for making food that tastes good. And you were kind of like, well, what is their job? Should they all of a sudden go, oh, you know what? You're right. We're going to make you a shittier version of Doritos. Here's these bad tasting Doritos. Please enjoy your food. You've got what you asked for. Like, no.
And by the way, they're more expensive.
Yeah. We made them in, every employee made them in their kitchen. And how do you navigate that?
So like I said, I don't have it, and you re-articulated it from the conversation we had however many years ago. I don't really find the food industry at fault as for-profit businesses making food more tasty, right? Like I don't find the fault in that, but I think it's a behavior challenge for us because I don't think people have ever seen food companies as organizations doing something other than providing things to, nourish your body. Like all of a sudden it's like you have to be concerned. And there's so much marketing around food. And I think we need to be better advocates for ourselves. And I find that it's the taste part that people struggle with the most. Yeah. Because ultra processed foods are so good. And when you go out to eat, the food is so good because the amount of butter and salt that is used in a restaurant is mind-blowing.
Right.
No one's using 2 tablespoons or 2 teaspoons of olive oil to cover your broccoli if you got it at a restaurant. And so the food just tastes so good. And I think one of the best things that I ever did went on a very low sodium diet. And so I was consuming about 750 milligrams of sodium per day.
And just for context, what does the average American probably take in?
3,600. Yeah. And so I was at 750, right? So this is half the American Heart Association recommendation for someone with heart disease. So 1,500 is their recommended level, which people think is crazy, right? 2,500 is the level for normal humans. And so I was at around 750, which is basically just what you're getting from minimally processed foods that you're consuming. And you end up using a lot of hot sauce. But what it does is it takes several weeks. The food tastes gross because salt is delicious. But it takes several weeks, and then your taste buds start to change. And how you enjoy food, starts to change. And that's one of the biggest switches that people get if you can stay away from the regular, unregulated consumption of ultra-processed foods and focus more on minimally processed foods. For a while, it just doesn't taste as good. Yeah. But once you give it some more time, then all of a sudden it does taste good. Like blueberries taste delicious. But if you're used to blue raspberry flavor, it's not going to. And so you have to give your body a little bit of time to adjust. And if you can get through that weaning off period, for lack of a better phrase, it really opens up a lot of different options for enjoying food. And I think one of the biggest things that people run into at first is minimally processed foods just don't taste as good. Yeah. I mean, you get a protein shake that tastes like Fruity Pebbles. That's crazy, right? And totally. It's not like when we were kids and it was protein powder, it tastes like chicken feet, but you're just choking it down because it was protein. Like nowadays, it's unbelievable, the flavoring. And I think one of the biggest things that people can do just as a palate reset, if they're having trouble, with minimally processed foods and ultra-processed foods, is really weaning off ultra-processed foods, focusing on these minimally processed foods, herbs, spices, not too much salt, and you give your palate a time to adjust. And then that food becomes much more enjoyable. That food becomes the preferred food. And you can then use ultra-processed foods to support the flexibility, the portability, and the shelf life that you need in your day-to-day life. And I've found that to be a really winning formula for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've noticed this myself. Like if I'm a big diet soda guy, but if I go off diet soda for a month, the first time I have a diet soda again, I'm like, oh my God, this is so sweet. Like it's almost tastes,
a lot, right?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But then you have another one and then you adjust. And then when you try to get off it, nothing tastes sweet for a while. It's like your palate really does sort of adjust to how, I guess I'll use the word intense of a flavor you're giving it. But to your point, when you get off that, nothing really tastes good for a while. But if you can kind of sit with that, just being like, all right, my meals are going to be boring for whatever it is, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Then all of a sudden, this health food that you once thought was awful, you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And if you can keep that up, then it becomes so much easier. But you can't get there without kind of going through the suck for a few weeks.
Yep, exactly. This is something with children, like with my kids, which range 11 to almost 18. I'm always talking to them about this. They love to give me the hard time. Like, oh, Dad, these these peppers are amazing. They taste so good. I'm like, yeah. Like they're always making fun of me. But if you can give yourself that time, like if you ever want to have just like a chorus of people to give you a hard time constantly, you should have teenagers. If you could get through that, it makes all the difference.
Totally.
Just have to wean off that intensity of flavor is a great description.
Yeah. I have 2 final questions. First, what is your favorite ultra-processed food? This is like your death row meal. The warden comes in. He's like, well, Dr. Mike, you got 8 more hours of life. We've sentenced you to death for telling us to stop eating Domino's pizza. What is your final meal?
Man. Oh, boy. I don't even know if it would be an ultra-processed food. I mean, my final meal...
Oh, come on.
It would probably be brisket, if I'm being honest.
Awesome.
It would be like a Texas smoked brisket, which you could technically make at your house, so it's not,
but with more than 750 milligrams of salt.
Well salted.
Yeah,
Yes,
you're like,
yeah.
we're going 7,500 milligrams of salt on this bad boy, just a salt crusting. Send me away. That might kill you before the electric chair, man.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I would say like day to day in my practical life, ready to drink protein shakes.
Okay.
So nowadays you can get these ultra filtered milk.
Yeah.
Protein shakes.
Like
in a
Fairlife and...
Yeah, Fairlife, Nuri. Nuri is my favorite.
Nuri's
30 grams
good.
of protein.
Oh,
It's in like one of those little
Shout out to
cans.
Nuri. Shout out to Nuri. Costco. It's like $20 for like 12 or 15 of them, and they're
Yes.
good.
So I'm usually on my kid, like, look, we can't do the ready to drink protein shakes because, like they're not cheap and these kids like just nonstop with and then I was looking at them, I'm like, well, actually, I'm like at Costco, I'm like, they're pretty cheap. They're like $1.50 a piece, maybe, when you look at it, and I'm like, all right, go for it. So yeah, like that's probably, my favorite. That's my ultimate ultra processed is the Nuris for sure.
Day to day. And then finally, and this one might open up a can of worms, but we're going to open it anyways. What are your thoughts on GLP-1s?
I'm all for them.
Awesome.
I was reading something last week about concerns around like hedonic drive.
What do you mean by that? Explain that for us.
So one of they impair your cravings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the beauty of GLP-1s is that for the 80s, late 80s and 90s, everyone thought, let's just get people to burn more calories. And so weight loss drugs were all stimulant based. Turns out that kills people, right? So they're like, what's the other part of the equation? Then they went to, let's get them to absorb less food. That also didn't work, right? So that was the Olestra era.
Yeah, so we're basically just, we won't get into details, just passing right through.
Yeah. And now they're like, okay, what if we just got people to eat less? Like they just weren't hungry. And that's what GLP-1s do, right? And so they reduce that drive for food. And so there's some thought that the same pathways, because everything in your body is interrelated, might also be reducing drive in other areas, such as relationships and other points of connection. So I think that is a interesting potential connection. But otherwise, I think they're amazing. Like if we've been looking for a drug to help people lose weight for however long, and now all of a sudden we have one. It's safe, doesn't cause heart attacks, right? If anything, there's a potential for lean mass loss, which is a concern in any sort of weight loss situation when you're eating less. Yeah. And all of a sudden now it's like, oh, we shouldn't do this. Like we shouldn't be eating these food, or we shouldn't be taking these drugs. Like it's cheating. It's all this other stuff. I'm like, dude, like give it like the food. I know we've been saying good things about the food industry. They've been cheating for decades, making chips taste like they shouldn't. Right? Like a McDonald's French fry. That's not how a potato should taste.
I had a friend named Tamar Haspel. She's a nutrition columnist for the Washington Post. She basically said our food system has become so technological that we are fighting against technology and we should be using technology to fight back. And that is what GLP-1s allow us to do.
Yeah, I think that's great. It's an unfair fight. And, now all of a sudden it's like our muskets have rifling. And so, it is. And so if you follow like the war reference, so yeah, we can fight back. I do. I have a hard time, especially with the tone that sometimes people take around discipline and hard work and all this other stuff. Everybody's lives are complicated.
Yeah, totally.
And there's all sorts of things going on metabolically. And if you're in a situation like minimally processed foods, it takes effort. Like you have to be committed to it. I mean, as fast as the meal prep videos are on TikTok, it still takes time and effort. And so for this to support you to eat less is, I think, a really good thing. So I don't have anything but good things to say.
Yeah, what I've heard most from, I've had a lot of people who read my Substack that are on them. They've said what it's really done is it just reduced the wording that I hear all the time is food noise. They just go, when I was trying to lose weight, all I would think about is food. And what am I going to eat again? Oh, I got to not eat that. Oh, the M&Ms are calling. I got to just not listen to them. And they're like, I just don't even think about food anymore. It's just not taking up my brain space anymore. And it's just been so much better day to day.
And now, there's a pill version, so it'll be interesting to see kind of the proliferation of that, because I think, sticking yourself is a showstopper for some people. So I think it's, I definitely think it's a move in the right direction, and via a mechanism that makes sense. We're not speeding up metabolism. We're not stopping it, increasing heart rate, any of those things.
Well, thanks for coming on, man. This was great.
Yeah, no, this was a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me on.
Welcome back to 2%. We are in the 2% kitchen in my house. I am wearing my Grateful Dead apron. That's when you know some culinary madness is about to go down. So in today's episode, we talked to Brady Holmer, who told us about all the sugary gels he ate during his Boston Marathon run. We talked to Dr. Mike Roussell, who told us about how ultra-processed foods can actually be beneficial in an endurance context, which gave me traumatic reminders of my time last year in southern Utah when I did this super long hike where I was hiking 25 miles a day. So I talked to the Duke scientist. His name is Dr. Herman Ponzer, and he's the expert. He's the guy for telling you how many calories you're burning during exercise. He did a little bit of back of the hand math, and he told me, my man, you were burning about 7,000 calories a day on this hike, which meant I had to eat a lot of food. Not to mention, all of the food I'm eating, it has to fit into a backpack that I'm dragging through the heat. And so it has to be stuff that is not going to spoil, that has as many calories as possible for its weight. So during the day, I'm eating a lot of energy bars, I'm eating beef jerky, I'm eating trail mix, I'm eating all this stuff. But at the end of the night, at camp, I wanted to sit down and I wanted to eat something that was a little bit savory. It was a nice little break and reprieve from eating all those energy bars. So what I landed on was the most insane thing I've ever eaten in my life. It sounded absolutely terrible, but I will tell you, after 25 miles a day, oh my God, most unbelievable thing I've ever eaten in my life. And we are going to cover it now. So here's what I would do. One, I would take a giant tortilla, and I mean giant, the biggest one you can buy at the store. So this is a burrito size, it's a burrito grande size, correction. This tortilla has 310 calories in one tortilla. So that means it's got to be bigger than a plate. If you get a burrito and it doesn't cover the entire plate and flop out over the sides, too small. So you get your giant tortilla. And then what I would do is I would get salami. Now, the reason I'm bringing salami, it is because it is one of the only meats that will not spoil in the heat. It didn't have to be refrigerated. It also was a little more savory, a nice little salty texture to push back against all the sweet stuff I'd been eating all day. So I would get the salami. Let me tell you, smelling this right now, it's giving me some flashbacks that I don't necessarily like. It's a terrible smelling food. I would get about 2 servings of this, which is about 12 slices. Then I would slap those down in the middle of the burrito. You got to line them up nice and perfect, just pretty maids of cured meat all in a row. And then from there, I would get dried mango. And then I would take 2 servings of that. It's 100 calories a serving. And I would line that up as well. Bam, bam, bam. And what the mango does is it adds a nice little sweet texture to combat the spiciness of the salami. It's really the yin and the yang of this caloric spud missile. And then for proper burrito rolling, you fold the top and then you fold that over and you roll it. And that right there was my dinner every night on the trail. I would sit on my sleeping pad half in a daze from all of those miles, and I would eat this, and it would be the greatest moment of the day. I would eat 2 of these. Now, if you do the math on that, one of these has about 650 calories, all ultra processed, all completely heinous, mixed into something even more terrible. 2 of those, it was about 1,300 calories. But let me tell you, it was exquisite in those moments, just totally exquisite. Now, as we covered with Dr. Roussell, this is not something I'm eating in my everyday life. I am not eating this as I'm doing my writing, as I'm doing my podcasting. But it is something that makes a ton of sense if you were doing a long backpacking trip, if you're going for a very long run, because you can just wad this sucker up. It's not going to get beat up in your backpack or your hip belt or whatever you're keeping this in, and you'll eat it, and it'll be amazing. And again, if you were sitting here thinking, no one should ever eat ultra-processed foods, this is terrible for a human being, I suggest you walk 850 miles across the hot desert of southern Utah, trying to carry chicken, apples, banana, and broccoli, and then you call me back and ask me for this recipe. Now I have a request for you. If you have your own version of a trail food, your own whack-ass mango salami burrito, whatever it is, the food that you eat on the trail that seems heinous in everyday life, but has totally changed your life when you're out in the wilderness, I want to hear all about it. Drop in the comments what you eat, and we might just end up talking about the best submissions in a future episode. Thanks as always for checking out the show. We are in your feeds twice a week, so keep an eye out for more. If you have a question, please submit it in the comments or send us an email. Even better, send us a voice note or send us a video of yourself asking the question, and we will do our best to answer that question. As always, in closing, have fun, don't die.